Welcome back. It's great to have you with us on SABC's Primetime News. Now, yesterday, the National Assembly passed the Public Audit Amendment Bill. It gives more power to the Auditor General, who has the unenviable task of wading through the financial records of government entities to ensure that the books balance and everything is above board. Now, if he uncovers corruption or fraud, he can now refer those findings directly to law enforcement agencies. To discuss, we're joined by Vincent Smith, who is the chair of the Standing Committee on the Auditor General in Parliament. And of course, he's also the chair of the Constitutional Review Committee, which has the mandate to propose changes, if necessary, to Section 25 of the Constitution that deals with the expropriation of land. So we can see how that committee's work is progressing right now. Mr. Smith, thank you for being with us in the studio. Let's start with the Auditor Amendment Bill, the Public Audit Amendment Bill, passed unanimously, so no one has a problem with this. Why didn't it happen earlier?
Well, because it was a lot of consultation that we had to go through. We wanted to make sure that the product that we deliver is a product that will stand the test of time and that it will have buy-in from everybody. And I'm happy to say that all political parties supported it yesterday.
So how exactly does this change things? If the Auditor General sees corruption, knows who's involved even?
In the past, the Auditor General will have picked up or detected all these things, put it in his report, and hoped that the executive authorities would sort it out. And very few instances have happened where it was actually sorted out by those that needed to sort it out. Now we've said to the Auditor General, when you pick it up, refer it to law enforcement agencies. If there's corruption, they must prosecute. And if there is negligence, he must then issue a certificate of debt against the individual responsible for his personal account.
Was there a problem in that some of the people who were corrupt were the same people that had to deal with his report?
Well, I don't know if they were corrupt, but I just don't think that there was sufficient political will to make sure that there was consequences for maladministration. Now we're taking it out of the hands of those that were given that task in the past and said to him, give it to law enforcement agencies and let them assist you and the law enforcement agencies in ensuring that there's consequences.
And he can demand money back, and that's not necessarily linked to corruption. It's anybody who's wasting taxpayers' money, basically.
Absolutely. The certificate is for maladministration, so to say, and not necessarily corruption, but where we can prove, or he can prove, that the state has lost income or lost money, he then can claim that money back from the accounting officer.
What if they don't pay the money back? Do then the police have to get involved? Or is there then an arrest? What if
well,
they just
I suppose if you don't pay it back, the normal debt recovery processes kick in. I would imagine ultimately they'll attach your property if you don't have the funds to pay it back. But what we are determined to do is to make sure that every cent that is taxpayers' money must be returned to the taxpayer. However it gets returned, that will be the problem of they that owe the money.
So this sounds very good to me as a taxpayer, but we've had these incredibly damning audits. I mean, only 7% of municipalities coming up with clean audits. Do you think this will actually change the outcomes here? I
think they will. When people begin to feel the pinch in their pocket, either through having to pay back or going to jail, I do think the attitude will change. I think that there's been a long period where there was no consequences and people did things with impunity, and that environment was what created the situation that we're seeing in local government now. But once people know that they're going to be held accountable immediately and harshly, I think the attitudes will change.
Yeah, it's still incredible that it's only happened now. Should municipal managers be shaking in their boots right now?
They have to. Those that think that they will get away with it after the president has signed it in for a shock. So I do think that all South Africans can rest assured that there will be consequences, immediate, harsh, and therefore those that are not skilled or qualified to do it would be best placed to move out.
All right, so that's the good news. Then you're looking at something else, which is a thorny issue. So put on your other hat as the chair of the committee looking at Section 25 of the Constitution. So this really is to determine, because that section says there will be compensation if there's land expropriation, but this is to determine whether that compensation could be zero.
Absolutely, yes. Look, the whole issue is around land reform. And we know that in the past, land reform partly has been hindered through the willing buyer, willing seller approach. The current government is saying that, look, we're going to expropriate without compensation. And my brief is to find out, or to ask the question, if the Constitution in its current form hinders that expropriation without compensation. If it does, what are the amendments that are necessary? If it doesn't, then well and good, let government go ahead and expropriate and test it in the Constitutional Court.
Do you have a personal view? Some people are saying, why are we wasting our time? The Constitution as it stands will allow for expropriation without compensation.
Well, equally, there are those that say that the Constitution has been what hindered the expropriation, and I think it's only fair to give South Africans an opportunity to add their own views, and we'll go back and tell Parliament what South Africans are saying. I buy the argument from those that say it can happen without, but that is also a different argument that says it needs to be changed, and I think we should give them equal treatment.
It's been a little confusing because the ANC at the same time has come up with a resolution that this should be tested, that this should go through the courts, government should expropriate without compensation, and then we see what the judges say. That sounds quite logical, don't you think? Instead of a vast consultative period, you just see what the courts say.
Well, I agree with you that we could go that route, but I do think that we also need to ask South Africans, what do they think should happen about the land? So we don't have to do one or the other. There's no harm in doing both of them simultaneously. And if the courts say, well, it is doable without changing the Constitution, well, everybody smiles and we go ahead and do it. If the court says the Constitution or the Constitution in its current form needs to change Section 25, then we change it. So I don't think there's any harm in doing them simultaneously.
The temperature around land is so high. Do you think this could be a good process in itself? So you will be going to all the provinces to educate people, to let people just air their views, I guess.
Well, it's something that has to happen. We can't postpone it any longer. Of course, the temperatures are high. Both sides, there are those that have high expectations of getting their land back and those that are panicking of losing their land. And therefore, both of them should be able to air their views. And I only appeal that it's a sober discussion. It can be robust, it can be hot, but at least if it's sober and mature, I think we'll get the answers that all South Africans require.
And we're not getting caught up in this constitutional debate when actually what everyone wants to know is, okay, if it's going to happen, which land will be affected?
Absolutely.
Who's safe, who's not? Who will be compensated? How will the rules work? Shouldn't we be rushing to that point?
I do think that that is currently happening. There was an expropriation bill that the President returned. We've asked those that were crafting that bill to go and revive it, tweak it, so that they could go and put it to the test. In fact, at the ANC Lekgotla 2 weeks ago, we were encouraged to go and test it. And I think that's what the ANC has decided. Go and do a live test in the constitutional courts and let's see what the courts say about it.
All right, so in the meantime, you're garnering the views of ordinary South Africans. You've asked for submissions. You're going on a roadshow of sorts. Just tell us how it
Well, we've asked for submissions. The submissions close on the 15th of June, written submissions. We're also going on a roadshow throughout the country in two groups, one group doing the inland and the other doing the coastal. And we will be spending 3 days in some and 4 days in other provinces asking South Africans, should the Constitution change and how should it change if it must change? If it doesn't, if you don't think it should change, why don't you think it should change? And then we'll go and say to South Africans through Parliament, this is what the view is. I want to say though that it's not about numbers. This is not a referendum. It will be based on the strength of your argument. Should we change the Constitution? Why? Is the Constitution fine in its current form and why? So it's not about numbers, but it's more about the strength of your argument, and that is what will convince us when we go to Parliament with our report.
So that's June the 26th to August the 4th. So can anyone pitch up and make an argument?
There is on the parliamentary website already the schedule of dates and venues, and all South Africans are welcome. And we've made sure that at least one of those 3 days or 4 days is a weekend, so that even those that are working will have an opportunity to come and air their views. So it is free access to all South Africans.
All right, thank you so much for your time this evening, MP Vincent Smith, chair on those two very important parliamentary committees. And if you'd like to take part and get involved in this constitutional debate, he says you can go onto the parliamentary website. We take a short break. I'll be back with